Welcome to Pitchslap.
Well, my name is Leanne Weimer. I am a lot of things. I am a podcast host. I am a problem solver of various things that small to medium businesses come across when they're trying to grow and get revenue and make their customers happy for a long time. I've worked in a lot of different roles from, senior strategic marketing analyst to acting CMO to consultant to social media guru unofficially. And I think at the heart of it all, what I do is make customers happy in exchange for products and services and getting paid to do so.
Hey,
Hey,
Friday, September 29th, recording date. You're allowed to change your opinion as soon as I hit stop. So nobody's going to hold you to anything that you say here. And welcome to season 1 of Pitchslap.
thanks for having me. I'm excited and I'm looking forward to having a pretty cool discussion and seeing where it takes us.
Oh, you have a conversation after this with somebody?
Oh, I mean, this one I thought was going to be cool, but who knows?
We'll shoot for cool.
We'll
We'll shoot for cool. We'll settle for whatever we get as they switch to a different show. Speaking of different shows, what's your show?
My show is Markegy, the science of strategic marketing. And that is kind of my fun way of saying that marketing is the blend of science, creativity, and strategy. And that it's not any one thing.
What's the most important part?
Building value for customers.
Is that strategy? Or is that creativity?
I mean, if you leave any one of those things out, it won't build the value, right? So if it's super duper just a vacuum of creativity or anything, it won't stand out. And if it's not strategic, then you're not going to get to the right people. So you can't give them value if you can't get to them. It's got to be, even a boring business can have creativity and strategy to it.
I feel like fully engaging my taunts. This is good. This is going to be a good time. All right. So we met passively, LinkedIn, commenting back and forth, goofing off kind of thing. And no.
We met through GTM games. And Julia had tagged us both in a post, and this was my first time doing GTM games. And I was like, wow, like, look at all these cool people. I'm going to use cool a lot today. All these cool people that I could really learn from that are also tagged in this. I'm like, let's see where this goes. I'm happy to be included in this. And I thought it was a really fun time.
It is. She's going to be recording with us. Our first recording of October.
Listen.
I'm excited. We'll talk about reinventing virtual events. But now I want to talk about strategy, science, and creativity.
Yes.
And maybe we'll roll back. Your background. You've been all over the place. I love that. You're not a lifer. You may be a lifer in the field, but you like the diversity.
I am not a still person. And growing up, I was exposed to a lot of different things that my family did or their experiences, or just being in a community that was really full of go-getters, I guess, if you want to be like kind of cringy about it. But I am more concerned with doing a good job and enjoying what I'm doing than I am loyalty to something that doesn't work for me at that season of my life. Because if it doesn't work for me, I'm not doing my best and people aren't getting the best that I can do. And, I firmly believe in evolution of ourselves and different seasons with different needs. So my background, took me a while to get there. I started off at community college. And then I was like, what degree am I going to finish? And I picked kinesiology. And I chose the hardest way to do kinesiology, which was the exercise science part, exercise physiology. And all of my peers went on to be like physical therapists or they went into healthcare fields. I did not want to do that. And so I worked more in the fitness and wellness space. And after graduating my undergrad, I'd always intended to go to a graduate program of some sort. I realized that I needed to know business, and it didn't matter what field or vertical or thing I did. If I didn't know how to have a business that worked, I was never going to get anywhere. Um, and so I went to business school, learned a lot, and I was totally neurotic while I did it. And so since then, I have had many self-reflection points where I was like, what is it that gave me that easy A? What is it that I was doing all along that I didn't realize was a job or I could become into a career? And it was marketing. And so I was like creating content calendars when I was a personal trainer, which is a really weird thing that personal trainers weren't doing when I was doing it. And so after I had my son, I came back to work as a marketer fully and completely. And I went chasing experiences, working for myself, looking for clients and projects, and built a pretty fulfilling, if you will, and frustrating at times, career out of it.
So, entrepreneur for the most part.
Yes.
Cool. Very cool. And you fell in natural ability, but fell into it. I'm trying to find a theme with the show. We're interviewing people, and there's not a theme yet.
I was raised where nonconformity is conforming. And that's a strange thing when you think about different regional subcultures in the United States specifically. The part of the U.S. that I grew up in is the San Francisco Bay Area. And I grew up in a time where I saw my dad work for a .com. I saw my aunt own her own travel company. I saw our family own or co-own various restaurants. So if it's nature versus nurture, it's a little bit of both, because you got to be intrinsically stubborn and not stubborn in a like asshole way, but you got to have this unknockdownableness, or you won't stay down kind of way about you. And some people are more willing to run towards conflict or run towards hard times, and other people just want to be told what to do. And both are equally valid.
Just ringing true to me. It's a similar footprint background. I didn't know that. I'm enjoying that.
Yeah.
Where are we going to go? You really threw me for a ringer, because this is normally where I'd be like, so what was your best mistake, or what was, and it seems that your major might have been your best mistake.
I wouldn't call it a mistake, because at the time, it was exactly what I needed. In 2004, a lot of things happened to me, and I won't go into detail about all of them, but one of them was what on the football field was not on a football field, but on a football field would be considered a catastrophic injury. And so I had to teach myself, people don't know this about me, I had to teach myself how to run, and I had to rehab a completely shattered ankle. And so besides the emotional components of recovering from, multiple ankle surgeries and getting like rods and pins and screws, I had to learn the physical way of taking care of my body and the types of supplements I needed and the exercises and the right way to do it for the rest of my life. So it was what I needed, and I got to nerd out on all of these like science things that I really, really enjoyed. And I got to challenge myself to reach this goal and do it when people weren't really expecting me to finish or be smart. And so I wouldn't call it a mistake by any way, shape, or form. I would call some of the people I worked for during my career maybe, learning opportunities. But the degree, I stand by both my degrees. As controversial it is these days about higher education, about whether or not you need it, I needed them.
And I was going to then ask you, have you ever been blindsided? And you talked about the people that you worked for, but you can always skip that.
I think what's blindsided me the most has been it's hard because blindside means like you're taken so shocked or so surprised. And I think that maybe I'm just so cynical, or I recognize so many patterns that I the only things that truly blindsided me, but I was still like, oh, that tracks, were some of those incidents that did happen my first year in college, my first year out of high school. Um, so yeah, I mean, life just throws things at you. And in what I learned early on was just to uh adapt and overcome, just roll with the punches. Because you every day you wake up, you're there, and you don't really get a say in the matter because you woke up. So you got to make the best of it.
So you've got hyper diverse background. You geek out on things. You got a concept around science of marketing, creativity, and marketing. Let's get into your theory. Like let's just skip the get to know you stuff. You've been all over the place. You're accomplished. Got lots of ideas. Like, but that's easy.
Yeah.
We got that. And you can pick up her show at any time if you're craving, if you need replete on that background. I would skip the October 17th episode, but other than that, you're good to go. So yeah, let's talk about what you do, what your philosophy is, and then we'll get into the fun stuff about what you don't want people's philosophy to be.
You know, my philosophy about marketing is that it is a necessary business unit that drives revenue. And I think that while that seems so like duh, obviously, it's not treated that way by people who have this, if I build it, they will come knowledge, or the really niche founders or the investors that are just like, a line item is a line item. And and that's unfortunate because they are missing opportunities, or they just don't know what they don't know. But I would say that, it's, in order to get to the bottom line, you have to tell people it exists, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and it has to like be relevant and meaningful to the people that you're trying to connect with. And you have to connect with them, and you can't just blow garbage. I mean, you can for a short term, but if you're looking for just like a quick buck, like, there's easier ways to do it.
Well, we'll need that takeaway list of quick bucks. But something that keeps coming up here when I'm talking to folks is executive issues. And I know it's something we talked about on your show. I barely remember what we did. I don't know what was wrong with me. I think between the episode I did on your show and the episode Evan Patterson did on here, I'm going to have to try and find citizenship somewhere else. But the theme seems to be that executive teams, VCs, investors who are living inside the four walls start getting this whole "we don't have competitors" mindset. And then they don't realize, okay, if you don't have competitors, then you're not in a category, and you got to build and define a category. Like there's this miss. And is it because great marketing is so transparent that people don't know what's happening? Is it because people have such braggadocious gusto and self-confidence that they don't realize that other people need to be informed? Like, what can we elaborate on where you were going with leadership that doesn't get marketing?
I think that there's two, from what I've experienced, there's two main camps, right? There's the, you don't know what you don't know, right? So like when I was in my science world and we were looking at all these details about things, it would be really easy to come up with a very, like, being involved in a STEM and being like, oh, well, if I engineer this, it'll do this. And therefore it's magic, it's gold. Everybody's going to want it because I'm so smart and I figured it out, or because there's this need. But what they fail to realize is that just because you love it or that you think there's a need or you have this technical knowledge doesn't mean that anyone else cares. And I mean that with a lot. But like if you can't get, and this is where you get into like product market fit or addressable markets, or is it a category design or is it just trash? It's not that it's not without value because you had a good idea, but there's tons of patents that are filed that no one ever does anything with sometimes. And it's because the cost of producing it or just the relevancy just isn't there. So there's that camp that's overly technical, that loves their baby, but doesn't realize their baby's ugly. And then there's this other camp of just very, very numbers people. And those numbers people are very black and white. And they have a certain, sometimes it's a framework, sometimes it's a list of criteria that they judge on. And it's a very black and white rubric. And the problem with a black and white rubric is that when you're an investor and you're investing in 10 companies, hoping that one of them gives you 10x, knowing the other 9 are going to flop, how do you choose which ones and where do you get lucky? And sometimes they just oversimplify things that just can't be simplified. And then you run into like lack of caring about branding or thinking that marketing is just fonts and colors or just oversimplifying things that have nuance or complexity.
Okay. So now I'm going to get into my blindsided. And maybe you'll agree that it was yours. I know it's a lot of marketers blindsided. We'll say that there's this third camp of exec teams and product builders that get it. And they understand the importance of marketing and they do what they can to support it. And they say the right things, they do the right things, they live as they talk. Okay, great. And then my blindsiding is I've often worked for people or worked with people that do that. And it's lip service. And you go in and the conversation, oh, I need a strategist on this. And we're launching this new thing. And we're at this point. And, we need you to own it. Oh, that's my favorite phrase. If somebody tells you need to own it when it's their thing, it often is a straw man situation. And some of us, like you and I, power through it and make gold out of that straw. But others, it's just a penalty. It's not fun. But how do you get through to those first and second folks that you've dealt with? How do you get it to a point where they do understand strategy and the need for strategy, and they do understand creativity, even if they don't have it? Or my favorite is when they think that they have it and they're standing over your shoulder all the time. Oh boy, get them a box of crayons. But like how do you juggle it? How do you teach? Because you've been places, you've led teams, you've come in and saved the day. What's the secret for those of us that still struggle with being brought in as a strategist and then being turned around as a production house? How come we haven't done 6 blog posts this month? How come we haven't done a thing? It's all about count. We have to make sure like it's visibility. No, it's not, because it's not functional. Anyway.
You know what? First, you're right. I have absolutely been blindsided by being gullible and believing people for, what they said and not what they do. So I take that back. That is, I still stand by the after I found out, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. I should have seen it coming. But I for sure have drank the Kool-Aid and been looking around and be like, oh, I'm the only one that drank this Kool-Aid. What's happening here? And I hate to like really just stick to one thing, like coming back to answering your latter point, is that you have to be relentless and you have to have that like willing to be disliked in the moment. And I'm not saying don't be a jerk, like don't be like, oh, this is a stupid thing to do, because that's not going to get you anywhere. That's just shooting everybody's foot, not just yourself. but you have to be able to finesse things into a way where you're answering today's need, because maybe they really do need 6 blog posts. Maybe that is the priority that's been established, and you don't know the rest of the demands being placed on the leadership that you're getting that from. There's always going to be unknowns. But you have to be willing to dually do the hamster wheel and say, hey guys, this is great. I hear you. What we really need to do is X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z. And you can't just say like, and you have to also investigate that maybe your presumption that your strategy or your thoughts are wrong or unnecessary, because what I've uncovered that I myself have felt, and a number of my peers, is that this emperor has no clothes, is that, there's these fairy tales of things that we think organizations need to do as marketers, and it needs to look like this, and it's got to be like that, and it's got to have these stages and steps and all these things that we think are the right way to do stuff. But there's plenty of people that are successful despite not having it be completely buttoned up or completely this X, Y, and Z, like hit this and hit this and hit this. So, answer the immediate needs, maintain an open mind, and investigate if what you're thinking and assuming is the right thing to do truly is. And then be relentless and educational and collaborate, bring people in instead of against.
And once again, you make it seem so easy.
It's not. It sucks.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend it's fun. You have to have that patience and confidence and like just fortitude to know what you know and be able to prove it and cling to it even in those moments of frustration. And eventually, with enough time and education and trust building, you'll probably get there. Because I think one of the things that people encounter is that they think that they are hired because of X, Y, and Z qualities. Like, oh, they saw my resume, they know what I can do. Well, maybe the person that hired you knows that, but you still have the rest of the organization to build that trust, to build that relationship with before they can jump on your ship. And sometimes that takes a year. Sometimes it takes 2 years. But you gotta be clinging to what you know is right, and you gotta be sure that it's right, and be willing to be like, okay, maybe we don't need to do that to get results.
So that's a moment where you have to prove it to the other teams because you're hired on competence, and what was in the past is in the past. Yeah, it's a cool story, bro. But for the team you're working with now, they need to see it. Is that why it takes a year, 2 years to win them over?
They gotta get that buy-in. It depends on the culture. Not every culture is A, what it says it is, or B, easy to be like. Not every culture is really actually very welcoming. There's a lot of cliques. There's a lot of established trust. There's a lot of burnt by legacy bad choices that it's not your fault, but you're culturally those marks are still there. Just because you're the new kid doesn't mean that stuff didn't happen, and doesn't mean that people are ready to accept these ways forward.
Is there a way to avoid to be tenacious and acknowledge the past, but not be compared to it, or
you can't control what other people think of you.
We're marketers. That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. What are you talking about? You're fired.
Well, it explains a lot now. But like on an interpersonal level, you can lead them to water. You can try your hardest, but sometimes there's just gonna be roadblocks, and you got to figure out what the roadblock is, why it's there, and then strategically think about internal marketing and think about internal sales, and treat the people on the inside the same way you would treat a prospect on the outside. And I don't mean like, once again, I think I wrote this and we might have had a conversation about it, but like, I'm not saying have like retargeting ads to people within your workspace about this idea that you had. But it doesn't hurt to put together, a more professional way or presentation or series of education or, all these things that you would do to empower a consumer internally.
Just itemized off these consumer empowerment scenarios. And with your method, you take somewhat of a bespoke approach. You were talking about the playbook. What is there anything in the playbook? Let's just get into best practices. Is there anything in the playbook that's like a must do when you get somewhere? Like any new CMO is going to rebrand the company. Like otherwise you're not a good CMO.
Well, I mean, sometimes it needs to be done. I know that there's a lot of flack out there about like, oh, well, it's just like some baloney thing. But man, I've seen some brands that were like stuck in the 90s and they needed a rebrand and it made a big difference. But, the number one thing that anyone doing, whether they're individual contributor or leadership or anything like that, they need to understand the people around them and they need to understand the people they're trying to reach. And there's always more that you can do for either of those two things. And there's always, obstacles when trying to do those things. I'm a big fan of the one-on-ones. If I am allowed to get my dirty little hands on contacting a customer and having an hour-long Zoom with them so I can hear their life story, I love stuff like that. And I've done that and created amazing content, not from necessarily slices of that interview, but insights that person gave me about the bigger picture and their point of view. And then as far as doing that with and creating those relationships with colleagues, when you start to understand the roadblocks and the problems that they're facing, you start to be able to better enable them to be on your side.
On the customer side, and I'm glad that we're creeping through the team dynamic aspect of it. But on the customer side, so you're getting these stories, and I've got a pretty pronounced philosophy on how you do case studies and customer profiles, but an hour, it's a long time. You don't talk to many business content people that spend an hour. They have their little checklist. They send a survey in advance. They want to know exactly how their product accomplished everything for that company, from waking them up in the morning to tucking them in at night. And you're pulling these insights, and they're exciting for you. Oh, I love having this person as a customer. Oh, I love this person as an individual. Oh, I love what their mission is. I love how they're using our product. That last one is the only one that seems to ever be used. And it's always used in such a self-promoting kind of way. I know that sounds weird because that's the whole purpose of it. But like when you're doing this hour-long interview, how much of that magic are you pulling away? How much of that magic can you use for the organization? And how much is it just for your self-gratification and to burn up an hour of a workday? Said as an exec that brought you in and said, I want you to do strategy. I want you to understand the voice of the customer. Why were you talking to the customer for an hour?
I asked for forgiveness without permission for most companies. In highly regulated industries, I'd for sure ask permission. But in the ones that are not regulated, I just make it happen. So there's that part of it. The types of things that I'm trying to get out during that hour are those open-ended leading questions. I do want to know what life is like for them and what their habits are first thing in the morning until they get tucked in at bed. But I don't want to know it necessarily in the view of my product, but I want to know it for opportunities, right? Because if, let's say they live in a certain region and they typically travel like 4 times a month, then maybe the places where I need to be doing like, advertising or the types of stories I need to tell them in our marketing are going to involve travel, like whether it's, luxury travel or it's certain airports being better than others and, or doing more explicit marketing in that airport or on that airline. There's so much that you can do. There's always more marketing to do, But the more time that you spend learning about what it's like for them in their lives, the more that you can find those themes and opportunities that are recurring across many people that might challenge your stereotypes of your customers that you might have already. And so I'm just trying to get to know them as a human, not necessarily as a user of my product, because once you establish that trust and rapport to get to know them as a human, coincidentally, they're more likely to give you that off the record stuff that is less contrived, that is less like, yeah, you gave me 4 choices, but what I really felt was this 5th way, and it's this higher quality.
So you tugged at my heartstrings in a certain topic here. But you also brought up something that is an argument I've been trying to make, that anecdotal data and anecdotal evidence is still high quality data. And
It is.
okay, so 2 parts here. How do we convince marketers that they need to collect anecdotal and what the value of anecdotal is? And then how they can teach an executive team that vibes often outweigh numbers.
So let's start at the beginning, right? So in our marketing function, we need to be storytellers. We need to figure out what the story is. We need to include the human aspect because humans buy from humans. They're more likely to buy when they can see themselves in the stories that we're telling, whether explicitly or implied via our marketing. And so when we have these anecdotes, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was one person, but millions of people all over the world still listen to the story and still cry at the end, or they still get engaged with the story. So you need a story, and whether or not it's something that's experienced by all of your customers or just 5, it's experienced by one of them. And as long as you can humanize your brand by figuring out how the brand connects to that human story, the more persuasive and insightful and connected your marketing materials will be. So if you didn't have that anecdotal story, you would be making one up. And so what is more likely to be true? Someone's true life story or something that a bunch of people sat in a room and made up? Now, there's embellishments or, edits to that person's true story to anonymize them or to somehow corporatize it or, to soften the rough edges. But you need to have a human-based story, whether explicit or implicit, that speaks to the humans that you are trying to reach. And so I would say to a team of investors that it's a lot cheaper to put me, one person, on the phone for an hour with someone and get their real life story that we feel is quasi-representative or able for someone else to imagine themselves in that shoe and get a transcript of it and edit that, than to put a team of 10 people in a room full of writers, unless we're going to hire writers, in which case that has dollar signs attached. So which one's cheaper, a phone call or the writers? Because I would say the phone call.
But that's what we do. That's what we want to do. We come up with a feature and we define what the benefit of that feature is. We come up with something completely new and we define who the audience is, why they want it, what they're going to do with it. And then we force that over and over again until it happens. So way to be an iconoclast here, way to just hammer at everybody. But then, isn't this sales job? Every good sales team I've ever worked with comes back from a trade show and bitches at me for hours about everything that was wrong, about everything they had to deal with. And all the pieces of feedback they got from the customer and how much they hate engineering. My position is that sales hates engineering. They don't hate marketing. Marketing's just a messenger. And we have that source of anecdotal. Why is there this gap? Why can't marketers just listen to how other people are perceiving something as opposed to shoving it out there? Am I asking something in rhetoric, or is this something you can answer?
I mean, I think the answer is the question, right? Like listening, actual listening. Because, for example, in one method I used for as a social media director was listening. It wasn't just social listening about like, identifying these top accounts that follow us and follow them, and then seeing what types of topics were discussed there. But it was engaging listening. And so I would honor, this was a B2C luxury item, and I was able to, in the Instagram stories, get engagement and buy-in by asking our followers, things that were sometimes selling points or, friction points in, what we offered. But other times, just trying to do customer research. Do you travel a lot? Do you like Star Wars or Star Trek? And then I would put in the like FAQs, like on our thing, does this happen, or this happen? And then even if they chose the wrong one, they would then know more about what it would be like for them to actually be experiencing our product or service. And so you can listen prior to doing the interview, but the more dimension that you can get by having that one-to-one conversation, the richer your understanding of those nuances and those gray areas and all the details that can't always come out from an algorithm or social listening tool. It's about creating connection, whether it's an hour long or listening to gong calls or just listening to feedback. But you have to give credibility to the feedback you get from sales as full stop. You've got to give them credibility. You can't just be dismissive about like, they hate trade shows. You got to be like, well, what can we do better with ours? Like a trade show is a trade show, but like, did we make it easy for them to do their jobs? Did we give them a place to collect the feedback? And did we give a follow-up from the feedback we got? Did we in any way, shape, or form break down silos? Or do we just set them up to be pissed off at us? So listening to sales teams, listening to primary sources, looking for hints and clues, and then taking those hints and clues and hypothesis, and then having a conversation one-to-one with the actual people, you can then ask better questions and get fuller, richer information.
After you take some action on those initial answers.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm still having a conundrum. Number one, Star Trek is the only right answer. But sales comes back. Customer comes back. Somebody comes and has the conversation with marketing, internal to marketing even. And they're displeased and they offer some input. I have rarely encountered a marketer that will take the humble approach and go, I kind of see what you're saying. Please elaborate. It's a very defensive group of people. And again, everybody here, you know how to get a hold of me. Feel free to throw the rotten tomatoes and anything else you want to do. I'll bring you on here for a counterpoint. But I don't encounter many marketers that say, oh, wow, I see what you're saying, or I don't exactly get what you're saying, but please repeat it a couple different ways until it lands for me, and then we can work on improving it. I often hear, that's how you feel. Okay, we're not changing it, or that's how the rules were, or my favorite. That's not what was in the plan. I love that one because then that proves the type of marketer that they are, that they can only plan, which only stands for perfect case scenario, and they can't be prepared, they can't be ready, they can't be nimble. Anyway, I'm not out here to insult every single marketer, but I'm definitely wearing my salesperson shoes at the moment in my frustration. So
it's cultural. It's cultural. It starts at the top and it comes down. If you are putting your marketers in a position where unless they do what their plan said and they stick only to that plan and that's it, end of story, black and white, you either do that or you fail, then that's bad leadership. Then you are setting up a situation where they can't iterate and operate until much further down the road in the next plan. You are putting them, you're basically like handcuffing their abilities to deliver better products as far as marketing goes. And so it starts culturally with leadership being humble and not fail fast, because you don't have to fail to iterate and evolve and pivot.
That's the word.
You got to iterate. You got to say, okay, yes, we'll make those edits. Yes, I know that, 10 people saw this document and it's frustrating because I liked it the way it started. But now that we have this new piece of information, it's new information and we should include it. It comes back to aggressive ownership of mistakes and being culturally wide, being willing to accept that we're all humans, mistakes happen, there's things we don't know, and once we find them out, we just got to do our best with it.
Thanks for nuking fail fast, because I'm a strong believer that it means give up when things start getting a little difficult. And it also means if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Got to iterate on the good too, right?
The world around us is changing every second at just an exponentially fast rate. If you think that you don't have to change, you are in for a world of hurt and failure.
So we keep ping-ponging off this whole, we're blaming the exec team. Might not necessarily be their fault.
It can be in the team. It can be self-owned. I mean, it can be everybody's fault and nobody's.
Arrogance?
Well,
I'd be a perfect marketer then. So that hand-tied, that imprisonment to doing what you said you were going to do. There we go. Don't change the strategy. I want my 6 blog posts. You're supposed to have these things out the door. Well, it's not a good idea to. Nobody articulates that. It's very hard to manage up when it's a deliverable. But do we, as marketers, so I'm going to put my marketing shoe back on and be a little bit more pleasant. As marketers, do we have to make up vanity metrics to CYA when it comes to being forced to do things we know aren't right?
I mean, it depends. That's my ultimate marketing hack. It depends.
It's a vanity metric right there.
I feel the urge to be non-committal in this answer, but I'm gonna put that aside. The thing is that politics internally and externally, and to, financiers and different things, they exist. And the vanity metrics are only really, like, there's times where they can get away from you and really truly only be surface level metrics, but that doesn't mean you can't deliver value that then also has good vanity metrics. So I mean, it's a sticky mess that we get ourselves in, and that we, there's this expectation of constant growth. Every quarter, every month, every week is supposed to build on top of the last one. And that's a hard position because sometimes it just doesn't. And sometimes there's Silicon Valley Bank failure. And sometimes there's political events. And sometimes it's just off season and seasonality. And it's uncomfortable to manage up, but there's a time where vanity metrics are additive, and there's a time when vanity metrics are a ploy to cover up. And I try to avoid any ploys to cover up, and instead say, we encountered this, and now that we've seen that this happened in response to X, Y, and Z, here's our plan moving forward to mitigate that risk of that happening again in the future. Or just sometimes, if it's truly a volatility event, you got to say, this was a volatility event. let's all work together to have a plan to, overcome these types of fluctuations. It
And
depends.
then we get those bad leaders again who cut you off, even though it's a perfectly reasonable response, and say, you're just making up excuses.
Excuses don't bring solutions.
Right.
Excuses are just, it happened, oh no. But when you start to have a carefully laid out plan of this is how we move forward in response to it, that's where it's no longer an excuse to me. And knock on wood, I've never been fired for that. It doesn't mean it won't happen in the future, but that's part of why I work well in certain circumstances and not others, is that I want to work for people that appreciate the authenticity and the truth and the thoughtfulness and the actual problem solving, instead of the stick your head in the sand like an ostrich.
You'd mentioned those gong calls, and I try to stay away from brand names, but we all know it's sales eavesdropping.
Sales eavesdropping.
Many marketers don't do it. Many sales enablement people I know don't do it. And even I don't lose stomach for every once in a while. It's like watching a child tie their shoes, or it's like watching a game show and knowing the answers when other people don't. Like you're sitting there and you're grinding your teeth and you're pointing and just trying to figure things out. Why did they say that? That's not even true. Like, as marketers, are we not conveying a message properly? So this is back to the internal conversation. We already talked about internal credibility and internal proofing, but why does everybody go so far off script so frequently? Like, are we missing something? Are we not? Like, what's happening?
When I was in sales, I'm not going to blanket call all sales.
And I'm not saying that. I'm just...
No, you're not. I'm just being very careful with what I'm saying, is that when I was in sales and I was nervous, or I had to do like a gazillion of these appointments a day, and I felt like it was just, oh, okay, here we go, and I felt like I was on repeat and a broken record, and it felt shallower in my delivery instead of like a real conversation. And so I would go off script, but within the just like getting to the point of the question in different ways or words, or, roundabout, sometimes even out of order, just so that I would be more engaged in the conversation, do what I felt like was a better job. Or I was just so nervous, I was just, a flurry, and that's what happens. I was awkward, and that's the human part of it, is that it takes those repetitions, and it takes that learning for people to have those bad experiences, to learn, where the question hits and how you can say it that it matters, and where, it's a script, but with your personality and your delivery, it actually works better. Like that, there's that finesse, and I'm stealing this word from someone who used it a few days ago. But it truly is the human part of it all. And so I would say that binging all of the calls can be quite painful. It is, but I like to ask the sales teams which ones they felt were their like really good ones, or like they felt like really insightful, or ones that stuck out to them, and then I'll just go straight to those. I'm not there to quality. I'm not their boss to quality assurance how they're doing their job. I'm in marketing. I just need to know the ones that they thought were really good, that stuck out to them. But sales enablement, they gotta listen to way more than marketing does.
Is eavesdropping on those calls a great way to get the conversation from the customer? Should decent marketers sit in on customer calls pre-sale?
Occasionally, yeah. Because here's what has happened to me as a prospect is I have said explicitly these lists of criteria of why I'm looking at this SaaS. and what I want from it and what I need from it. What parts are like, if you tell me this stuff, you're just going to be condescending and rude. I'm the best customer because I give it to you up front, and I almost like, here's how to win my business. Just tell me these 10 things or less, never really 10. But I had a rep that just condescended to me the whole time and refused to touch on those key points. And he gave a completely different presentation than the one that I explicitly asked for. And so I think that listening to those calls where it just is painful because the rep, like, in that sense of the way, went off script and didn't, connect the dots between what they're being asked and what they're talking about. It can lead to better training, better marketing. If that information I could have just found on their website in a self-serve manner, I wouldn't even bother to go through that call. Or if it was self-serve on the website and I had already read it and I say in the call, hey, I've already read this. Let's use our time more wisely and not go through it again. There's people want to, like, they're there for a reason. They're there because they see some sort of value in it. And from a sales perspective, if you can't pick up on the emotional intelligence enough to just give them what they're asking for, then what are you doing?
Well, sales has gotten into a very heavy order taker market. They show up with a menu, they hold the menu out, please point at the items you want, they check the boxes, and they take it back to the kitchen. I mean, that is what it is. But I like this ride-along theme that you're getting into. And so now I'm going to hit on a controversial area that keeps coming up. Should sales and marketing be the same team? And who should be in charge?
There is no right answer. This is my disclaimer. It depends on the industry and the product. Sometimes it is the sales and the marketing and the executioner might be all one person in certain industries. In others, it's highly regulated, or, for example, in healthcare, a doctor should not be the salesperson. Or, like a medical professional needs to just be a medical professional expert. So some experts need to be experts and neither sales nor marketing. And that's almost like the engineering. But in some of them, sales and marketing, because marketing has to follow such regulations that it doesn't make there should be training for both teams. And they should work closely together, but sometimes they do need to have different umbrellas. It really depends on size, strength, skills, but there needs to be, regardless of whether or not they're the same or different department, there needs to be like heavy partnership.
Okay, so with that heavy partnership, are there just too many handoffs? Are there too many players on the field?
Sometimes. Absolutely. I think that there's absolutely sometimes too many handoffs and players on the field, even within a marketing department, right? So if we look at like an agency model, which sometimes likes to say, okay, this person's CEO or SEO, and this person is, pay-per-click, and this person is social, and this person is blogs, and, and you start to get like too many like channel tactics it as like teams, instead of like having somebody that follows like the whole account like fluidly. Sometimes that like diminishes things. And so, with the sales to marketing handoffs is that, it's almost like marketing needs to be like the little bird or person on the shoulder where we're like eavesdropping, and sometimes we chime in, but we need to let sales get through their processes and then observe it and help make it better. But I've never been a big fan of the like one person does the cold calling, one person does the next call, like, discovery call, and then you pass it off to somebody else, and that person starts fresh with good or bad notes, and then they do this presentation. And then when you're trying to get to like a contract stage, a fourth person shows up and the first two aren't even there. I think that overcomplicating things can definitely become a major issue.
Why do we do it?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you gave me
yeah.
physical pain when you were talking about an agency model that didn't have an account manager, that didn't have a PM, that didn't have a strategy in play, where it was just produce. It was a retainer burn down. Let's just hop on Upwork and hire random people.
People don't have time to interview the 30 people on Upwork to get to the one person that, does it.
No, that's what I'm saying is like, what agency doesn't have the agency that the we need 6 blog posts executive would hire is happy to pick up the phone or send an email with tons of typos to that individual who's going to be doing the SEO and knock it out. Anyway, I'm going to get myself burned at some stake, but
this is where it's hard. It's a hard balance because it's really easy to have a long career and get so far removed from being in the weeds, and the weeds being the individual channel tactics and execution of these things. And these things are changing, once again, lightning fast. So even if you 10 years ago did ads and let's say you did digital ads 10 years ago, that doesn't look the same today. And so you may not have enough practitioner level information to be responsible in including it from your high level lady in the department. And so you just want to hand it off to an agency that does that, or you just want to, hand it off. So it's complicated and complex situations are hard to instill clear communication, expectations, and knowledge. And it is a wavering line of balance of how much do you need to know and how much can you delegate. Is
that why practitioners fall into this whole deliverables and metrics outweigh accomplishments?
They may not know about their accomplishments. When I was freelance and doing work like that, is that I was just given tasks, and it'd be like, okay, well, can you copyright this, or can you make this? And I would do it, and I would not have any CRM data. I would not have any. I wouldn't be given the information about how it performed. I would just be given, oh, well, our brand voice sounds a little bit more like this. Can you make it a little bit more punchy? Well, I don't know. Can you be more clear? Did it work
for the strategy at that point? Did you even know why you were making what you were making, or who you were truly making it for?
I mean, you're always making it for the people that are with the money, the investors, and the customers. You're
making it for the street. That's the thing that I keep hearing way too often lately. Please stop the street thing. Anyway.
So for example, you have an idea of what you're making it for. You might have some, gross idea of, oh, well, I'm being held to driving this much revenue this quarter, and I need, this much of it to come from the thing you're in charge of. Well, what else are you doing? And so that's where you're getting it. Great leaders, the leaders that we aspire to be and that we aspire to work for and with, will do their best to treat internal practitioners as customers and educate them and tell them that why, I am looking for, and they give their ask of the deliverable, and then they set this expectation of where it fits into the puzzle, and they bring it back to the mission, the overarching company culture, story, mission. This is what we're doing, and we're doing it to accomplish this KPI. We're doing this KPI because this is how we blah, 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 blah. And that's what the leaders that we aspire to be, the type of communication we hope to give ourselves. If we can intentionally make space to do that, our outcomes will be better.
It does exist.
It can. And
I did a consultation with a marketing firm earlier this week. I'll name drop you, MKG. And part of what I was doing with them was trying to get everybody on the team to think about expanding the business practice and what customers it would benefit. And one of the teams came back talking about middle of funnel and their concerns about middle of funnel. And I had all but given up and thinking that marketers only care about the top of funnel handoff. But knowing that there was a concern and that they needed a safe space to address it, like, do you think that top of funnel tofu has been the most comfortable cop out ever to stop doing your job and just say, we put them there, we filled it, funnel's full, that's what we worry about. We don't worry about anything else. And then stop listening and then stop caring and then stop doing anything. I mean, you've referenced a few times about marketing's obligation to really follow the deal to the end. And for the past 30 months at Okta, just left last week, but I was a quota-carrying marketer. That's exactly what I did. So I believe in it. But like, how do we institute that? How would you institute that? Nobody pays for strategy. So whatever you do right now, everybody's just got to, nobody's going to write you a check.
So I struggle with middle of funnel because the mental gymnastics it takes for me to delineate in a relationship what's middle and what's top and what's really top and what's really bottom. I don't suck at this, but it's a place where I get very like, well, what about? I get the whataboutisms, right? So for me, and the way I like to do marketing is that all of these questions or comments or types of content that might quote unquote fall in the middle of the funnel, I think that those belong equitably in the top of funnel stuff. You can do branding by answering these middle of funnel questions. They aren't mutually exclusive. And I really struggle with calling them mutually exclusive labels because the labels feel so arbitrary to me. And I get that we need arbitrary labels. We need them. They help us understand things and they're very important. But this is where people might look at me and be like, Leanne, you suck at marketing. I don't think I suck because of results, but I don't do well when we call stuff middle of funnel because I just struggle with the definition of it. I don't see that someone put in their email, real or fake, on a lead form. I'm not quite sure how much power that holds into their intent to close a deal. For me, I see this whole area that's marketing, and then I see this beginning of a journey that involves direct contact, and whether that's a lead form that's actually intentionally, I have a question about your product, I want to know more, like the hand raisers, the high intent people. I see like those, so I see it as like non-direct interaction or not passively, but surface like fake interactions, like, and then I see direct communication, and then I see sales conversation that's like into the process. So as I'm saying this, I can think of examples like, okay, well, I'm a salesperson and I am doing social media marketing. I post on LinkedIn. Someone's commented on my LinkedIn box. They must be interested in our blah, 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 blah. No, they're not. Like, unless they explicitly say, hey, that's really cool, let's set up a time to talk more. Like, they're just participating socially. And I know plenty of people that listen to webinars for the first 5 minutes because they thought that the title was going to teach them something that they want to know about. They hear the beginning, it's all sales pitch, and then they just leave. That person has no intent to buy your product. Their intent for why they came to that webinar was this clickbaity title that maybe you enticed them with this thing and then you didn't deliver. So there's these arbitrary lines that we like to make because we have to make them, because we have to organize things into what we're doing in our tactics and our strategies. And middle relationship is a very real place, but I struggle with it. So that's my soapbox. I'm sure I said a lot that is a little iffy.
Yeah, I don't even know where to pick this up at. Use the term clickbait. I think the word everybody uses now is hook. I think that they're synonymous. Oh, good. I'm glad we got video on this one. For those listening, go to YouTube at the right around the hour mark.
I think there's a way to do a hook without it being clickbait, and I think there's a way to do a not hook and make it just total baloney. Or even just naively thinking it's a good one because it works for you, but it not being like a real life, widespread, actually felt by your ICP kind of thing. So there's a range because we're all people. We're just doing our best that we can do in the moment.
So you nuked the funnel, you flatten it, you stepped on it, it's flat.
It's archaic. It's arbitrary, and I don't apologize.
So when is marketing done? Then that's
it's not. It's never done. Marketing is never ever done.
So sales works for marketing. Sales is in the marketing team.
They're a cousin. They're a sibling. I mean, they're a bubble. I'm not sure if they fall inside of the circle or outside of the circle. I think that the best ones blend into some sort of Frankenstein, where it's all patched together. But marketing isn't ever done because it supports sales. It supports the organization. So you want to market to the people that don't know you yet. You want to market to the people that kind of know you. You want to market to the people that are in the sales process without interfering in the sales process and making them annoyed because now you've spammed them. You want to market to people that just closed, and you want to make sure that they're onboarded and that they feel like they made the right choice and they don't have that buyer's remorse and they know what to do next, and that they're, they stay on that high of, yeah, we're going to do this thing. You want to market to existing customers at emotional high points so that you can get referrals and that they don't churn. You want to market to people that did churn in case you can win them back. And you want to do that carefully, not to the people that you royally effed up with. But those people, you just want to say you're sorry in a nice marketing kind of way. There's almost no situation where your marketing should be disconnected from the customer. And I think that that's where sales has, if you put the customer in the center, everybody attaches to the customer, and sales attaches to the customer, but kind of links arms with marketing.
Where marketing is I wouldn't say servant or even bottom bunk or anything like that to sales. The shepherd. I don't know. I like this opinion, especially because, again, I'm a fan of quota carrying marketers, because I'm a fan of the funnel isn't really a thing. The guy that'll be on next week, he's got one of my favorite quotes. They're not actually a customer until renewal. And
that's a good point.
And yeah. Okay, you ready for the lightning round?
All right. I think I feel like
you got anything you want to get off your chest? It feels like I was just rapid firing controversy at you, and you were deftly handling it. Not even a sweat.
I mean, I am thankful for the opportunity to have my anti-middle of funnel rant, because I've definitely been in job interviews or different like types of content interviews where someone's asked me that, and I fumbled it hard. So I'm happy that I got to have my moment where I'm just like, no, it's not the thing. It is a thing because we have to make it one. But
okay, now we have to roll back. Why do we have to make middle of funnel? I don't even know what the intent of standing it for is. It's limbo.
It is.
It's a hot potato.
It's simplifying things so that we can, what measured gets managed, right? So we have to measure things to some extent, and whether the outcome is a vanity metric, this is a whole nother controversy, and we can spend another hour deep diving this. But if you don't pay it attention and you just leave it in this like limbo stage, and you don't attach it to a set of actions or deliverables or whatever's, or, into the overarching strategy, then it just gets forgotten. And that's why we have to call it something, is so that it doesn't get forgotten, and we have some way of addressing those needs that come in between or as a part of somebody either getting to know us or knowing us already. It should be more like an adolescent funnel, maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit of kid, a little bit of adult. I don't know.
Okay. I'll wait for that hour-long monologue to help me get through that. So you're sated. You've got that replete on something that you needed to cover with the funnel argument. Okay. So lightning round is good. We can do that.
Let's do it.
We only got 2 this time. GIF or GIF?
GIF. Because GIF is peanut butter.
The sales hate marketing.
It depends. Some of my best friends are salespeople, so maybe I am, the exception to the rule. But one of the previous sales directors I worked with, many of the previous sales directors I worked with, felt like I mentored them. I was invited to one of their weddings. One of my best friends is in sales, and she was in pharmaceutical sales, and now she's in healthcare recruiting. So I think that if sales hates marketing, then it's a symptom of poor performance and bad communication or unrealistic quotas. I mean, it's more of a symptom than a cause.
Okay. I'm going to open the door for the other ones. Most important metric for a salesperson.
I'm mentally juggling between, and it depends on the type of sales you're doing, but not quite cold outreach, but some sort of outreach. If you're not out there being a self-starter and a go-getter and looking for opportunities and contacting multiple individuals and getting those touches, you can't make something out of absolute nothing. Unless you're doing marketing. That's what we're trying to do, right? So if you're a salesperson and you're not having conversations that are real conversations, not just my auto dialer reached 10 numbers that didn't answer, you gotta have contact with people. As a marketer, I would think my preference with my marketing selfish hat on is that a successful salesperson is the one with the best notes in CRM, most thorough notes and inputs. But honestly, it comes down to dollars. If you have conversations with 500 people a week somehow, and you don't get any business out of that week after week, month after month, you're not going to make it to year after year. The business, unless they are totally inbound and they are not needing any sort of sales support, they're just bleeding money on your salary and your benefits. You got to have revenue. It's just there's a window of time where you need to up ramp and get those relationships started, and you can't get those relationships without the conversations, but you got to have revenue at some point.
Right. We're lightning round. Most important metric for a marketing team. I do like how it's always a marketing team and a salesperson.
Right. It's one person, but the marketing, we get a whole team, which is, I don't know. Often I've seen it vice versa, where there's less marketers than sales.
Middle of the funnel.
Oh, I mean, it's got to be that.
Well, this is the slowest lightning round I've ever done.
I'm sorry. I think, and
you're being thoughtful. That's the problem. This is supposed to just be from the gut.
From the gut, it's revenue. I mean, it's once again, if your company's not making money, you don't have a company anymore. At some point, you can get lots of investors for lots of years. You can be a fire festival, but at some point, it all comes crashing down.
It's actually launching a second one now.
I know. Don't hold yourself to such high standards when someone can be so full of bullshit that they can make an entire fire festival happen. I don't know, and then do it again somehow, and then have documentary. We all know what fire festival is now, so that's some amazing brand recognition.
I think would be more impressive is if he orchestrated it to play out exactly like it did the first time, because I think that's what people are buying. They're not buying the what it's going to be. They're
not buying the aspiration.
No.
They're buying the hot mess.
exactly. They
Dumpster
want
fire.
to be affiliated with this moment in history. It's like people buying chunks of the Berlin Wall. If you were smart and you had concrete and spray paint, you could be selling that left and right. All right.
All right.
You can recuse yourself from any of these. Most important function in marketing.
Are we thinking like T-shape?
This is why it's
Leave it.
the lightning round, because I'm asking the questions nobody wants to answer.
Individual contributor is what the first word association came to mind.
Perfect.
Is.
I'll take it.
All right.
Last one. PLG. Is it a sales motion or a marketing motion?
It's an operational motion.
All right. Well, we'll have to add that to the list.
It's operational. It's a format of business for a while.
All right, Leanne. Thanks for joining. Thanks for all the technical glitches at the beginning. I don't know if I'll leave those in there, or hilarious chat. Are you there? Can't see you. You can't see me. But yeah, thank you for coming. This was fun. I don't normally get to just grill people about concepts.
I appreciate the conversation. I love talking about this type of thing and really getting into that, what are we even doing kind of conversation, because I think that needs to happen more often.
People want to get a hold of you. Do you want them getting a hold of you?
I absolutely, as long as you're not creepy and you aren't trying to pull my information from Zoom info, I would prefer to be contacted on LinkedIn, Leanne Weimer. That's 2 last names with a hyphen in the middle. Or you can email me at info@markigy, markigy.com.
Sounds good. Hey, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too. Thank you.